The 5 biggest F1 disappointments of the decade. A light purse is a heavy curse, especially in the F1 world. What do you guys think? And what if I told you the F1 you so adore was trashed by so many? Or how about the fact it failed to impress billions of people in India? The crowd booed and jeered, and F1 never returned back to India. Sounds unbelievable, but trust me, the critics don't bluff, huh? Would you be interested in diving deep into the other disappointments of F1? We sure would. Now, just think about how quickly it would take a dime to fall from your pocket to the ground. And it takes fame that quickly to crumble into pieces. One mishap and all that you have built is burnt into ashes. Now let's see some of the worst mishaps of F1. Number 1, failed to tell a story. Seeing how we were lured by F1 and got trapped into luxury, it's clearly evident they were masters in weaving a good story. But every story has got flaws. What do you say? So one such failure of F1 was when it failed badly to tell the story of the extraordinary abilities of the new hybrid V6 turbo engines in 2014. It freaking looks like a taxi cab, but it was amazing. If only they could have sold it better. Just imagining a taxi cab racing with mind-wrecking models of Ferrari and Mercedes makes me burst into heaps of laughter. If anything, I'd call it the biggest disappointment in the last 10 years, but well tried, F1. Looking at its success now, I must accept they did see the light in the darkness. But don't you think the opportunity to promote the sport slipped out of their hands? To be honest, the need to attract viewers was at its peak during those days. A day late is a dollar short, and looking at how they broke at one point proves it all. We'll cross this bridge when we get there. And moving on, everything at F1 screams of wealth. Look at them. From racers to staff, we can see them making big bucks. But we must agree that a fool and his money will soon part. And that brings me to the next biggest disappointment of F1. Number 2, money talks. One of the biggest disappointments in the last decade was how the private equity company CVC Capital Partners cared only about the return on its investment in the sport and pursued cash ruthlessly throughout its tenure between 2006 and 2017. Everything they did was designed to squeeze money from the sport, and they pretty much avoided any investments. If you ask me, I'd say that is the worst business strategy. One cannot criticize such people as this is their goal, but this is a red flag to all the sports companies out there to avoid the same happening to them. No wonder they caught themselves in a pay driver controversy. We all know pay drivers are not new to F1, but that was as low as the company could go. Just imagine buying your way into a seat means those without money bags behind them can't get through, even if they're more talented. Not fair, right? And we'll see a couple of racers who went through this mess, but before that, I would like to ask you how you liked the video so far. Let us know in the comment section below, and if you don't want to miss our updates, click the subscribe button quickly. So one famous example was when Pastor Maldonado replaced Nico Hülkenberg at Williams for the 2011 season. The pastor did bring loads of cash. Well, talent should always shine through money. Unfortunately, talks. If you still don't believe me, just ask Mark Hines, alright? He won the Formula Vauxhall title and then the British F3 title in 1999, beating Jenson Button. But he never made it to F1, did he? Where is he now then? Funny old world. How about I tell you he is coaching racing drivers like Lewis? Put him in his place, I must say, critics say he got what he deserves. Anyway, let's move on. Number 3, Robert Kubica's crash. Where do I start on this one? In short, drivers like Robert Kubica lost the best years of their lives. Shall we look into what happened to Formula One driver Robert Kubica? So in February 2011, he was seriously injured while competing in the Ronde d'Andorra rally. Such a pity. If you are wondering how it all happened, then here you go. The crash barrier came through the engine compartment and into the cockpit area of the car, leaving Kubica with multiple fractures to his arm, hand, and leg. Unfortunately, Kubica was due to race for the Lotus F1 team that year, and by then, our guy was in a hurry and had already signed a pre-contract with Ferrari. That means we could have seen him driving for Ferrari in 2012, if only this wouldn't have happened. If it makes you feel good, then let me tell you, he had later returned to F1 with Williams at the end end of the decade. But we can't for a second forget how the best years of his life were lost because of that mishap. And this isn't the only time it all happened. Take, for instance, how Taki Inu was hit by the safety car. I mean, who in their right mind would have thought something like that could have happened? It's already dangerous enough being an F1 driver. Now, don't tell me breakdowns and crashes are all part of the game, huh? That doesn't make a good excuse for F1. If they think they could butter this whole thing, they should definitely come up with something borderline acceptable. Actually, when you break down, you know that help is on its way. Just to fill you in, that safety team and medical cars are all that help. But what you don't expect to happen is to be run over by the same car that's arrived to help you. Yep, that's right. That was what happened in the 1995 Hungarian Grand Prix. As you can see, Taki's car went up in smoke, and in seconds he quickly parked it and jumped out. How smooth and fast the move was, but if only he knew what was coming for him, right? While trying to get a fire extinguisher to help the marshals with the engine fire, the medical car arrived and knocked him over the bonnet, injuring his leg. The irony is he was fine before that. Number 4, F1 Indian Grand Prix. The arrival of Formula One in India. As exciting as it sounds, it was nowhere near that. While everyone hoped F1 would have its breakthrough by conquering the world's second most populous country, India, no one guessed what a disaster it turned into. The Indian Grand Prix at the Buddha International Circuit outside New Delhi. F1 didn't give up the first time. They tried 3 times and failed badly. The event in 2013 was all the warning they needed, and in seconds they were out of the country with their tails between their legs. If you were wondering what happened, let me give you a quick brief. So there was a dispute over taxes between the sport and the government of the state of Uttar Pradesh, which led the race contract to be terminated. Number 5, Spygate, McLaren versus Ferrari. This is quite a big one, and there probably isn't enough time left to see how we've reached the end of the video, so I'll tell you this real quick. Do you remember the fireworks of Hamilton versus Alonso in 2007? It was so great to watch, but who would have guessed it would also turn out to be the worst year for McLaren? Yeah, because the team was excluded from the Constructors' Championship then. Why? It all revolved around hundreds of pages of secret information from the Ferrari factory, and McLaren turned out to be the fox in the herd of lions. I can already sense you guys are arguing, but wait till you hear this. FIA literally said McLaren had used it to gain a fraudulent sporting advantage. The punishment was inevitable. A record $100 million fine and the wiping of all constructors' points for that year. Ouchie, that must have hurt them badly. Anyway, it's been a decade, and we always end up every year seeing the championship of Lewis Hamilton. But looking at these, we can say there is more than that meets our eyes. Would you agree if I say the glam of the F1 world covered up all these mishaps? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.